Let's start with a short day in the life at a Nazi camp during World War II. After a year of living in a tiny, crammed, and inhumane ghetto, the Nazis transported you and your family to a concentration camp. This is your life now, if you can even call it life. You're woken up at 4:30, crammed in a bunk bed teeming with emaciated bodies, people. You don't know where your family is. They're probably long dead, you think. Being able to think is rare here. You need to use the bathroom, but you don't even make an attempt because you know there will be hundreds or thousands of other prisoners in line to use the limited, privacy-destroying bathrooms. You only have 40 minutes to get dressed, use the bathroom, make your bed, clean your barracks, and eat breakfast before roll call. So you get dressed and ready yourself. You receive your breakfast, which is your only solid food of the day, bread. You spare it for the rest of the day. You go to roll call. It's exceedingly hot outside, where you must stand completely still for an hour as the Nazi guards count people over and over. You see someone in front of you faint and fall from the heat. The guard notices, walks over to them, and kicks them. They're left on the ground. The guards return to work counting. Finally, you find your work group and leader and start the walk to work, which is 1 kilometer. Work is moving heavy rocks up a hill. The officers make you sing racist songs about yourself on the way. At noon, after 6.5 hours of work, you walk back to the roll call area with your work group, and you spend another hour standing. You get a mushy, questionable soup for lunch, which you try to eat with your spare bread. After that, you find yourself back to work until 6 p.m. Any who die are brought with you and your group to roll call, another hour. You get your last meal of the day, another soup. The barracks, you have some time to yourself, so you decide to try the bathroom. It takes a while, but you manage to use it. When you get back, it's almost 9 p.m., which is when you must go to sleep. You're lucky that you weren't beaten or taken advantage of today. You're also lucky to still be fit enough for labor. If you're lucky enough to not be killed immediately, the cycle repeats. For most, it ends with death. Now let's look at a day in the life of a Japanese American in an internment camp through the eyes of Kaiko from Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. You're awoken by your dad, surrounded by your parents in a makeshift room. Your mattress is made of rough straw on the ground. The walls of the room are made of a thin tar paper, and the roof is made of tin, providing little insulation from the outside environment. 5 other families share the army barrack-like building that you live with your family in. The room is 20 feet square, quite small, especially for larger families, but everyone manages. 1 coal-burning stove heats the barrack during winter. There's no running water in the barrack. Through your window, all you see is the arid, treeless, grassless landscape of Minidoka, Idaho, along with other barracks, fences of barbed wire surrounding the camp, and searchlights on towers with machine gun-wielding soldiers pointing in towards you. Although some things are somewhat normal, there's an overbearing presence of threat and prejudice. You aren't here because you did anything. You're only here because you are of Japanese descent. The mess hall is a place for food and also where laundry facilities and the only restrooms are. You go to breakfast. When you go to use the bathroom, you find no partition between the showers and toilets. It destroys your sense of privacy. Further, you can't use the flushing toilets because the sewer lines are still under construction. At the mess hall for breakfast, you get eggs and rice, which isn't fancy, but it's filling and it works. You've heard that other mess halls have much worse food. Your mom has made tea and your dad is reading the camp printed newspaper. Even under camp conditions, you and many others keep your loyalty to the United States. You identify as American, and even if you think it's unfair, this country is home. On weekdays, you go to the camp school, which you're glad is available, but it isn't exactly luxurious either. You sit in a barrack dedicated to a class with 50 other students and 1 teacher. There are only a few books and your teacher keeps changing. No teacher wants to stay. You persevere anyways. On weekends there are sports, festivals, and free time. Your parents and the rest of the adults work during the day, mostly farming here, or some office work for the women. At one corner of the camp, there's an area where Japanese can meet with people living outside of the camp, and a lot of items are smuggled in an attempt to improve life in the camp. One day, Henry snuck himself into the camp to see you. Since he's Chinese, the guards didn't really notice. You love him. You wish you could escape with him. Thanks to infrastructure, even if it's slow sometimes, you've been able to send and receive letters to and from him this whole time. The crowded, unusual life erodes you over time, but with clubs and festivals, you're able to maintain yourself somewhat. It's not fair, and it takes a chunk of your life that you can never get back. You hear of a riot at a different camp that killed 2 Japanese Americans, and it makes you wonder how much longer this will go on. The mystery of it hurts. The sun setting signals that you should return home if you're not there already, and get ready to sleep. It gets cold outside, and you again notice the fences and towers holding you and your family, along with the rest of the Japanese, imprisoned in a camp. You try not to let the searchlights keep you up. You think, of course it's not great, but it could always be much worse. Now let's talk about some comparisons between the Nazi camps and Japanese internment. Living conditions. Nazi prisoners' sleeping bunks were crowded, dirty, and uncomfortable. Disease spread quickly thanks to the lack of personal space. They were forced to wear uncomfortable striped uniforms, and there are no bathrooms or running water in the bunk rooms. There was effectively no such thing as medical care in the camps, and they were given effectively no protection from the weather. While not as spacious as the pre-internment housing, the Japanese were offered individual rooms for each family. They weren't forced to wear specific uniforms like the Nazis, but they did not have running water or bathrooms in the rooms or barracks. Although there were hospitals, they didn't always provide enough care for the internees, and food was sometimes more scarce than ideal. The remoteness of the camps often led to extreme temperature highs and lows, which the barracks were ill-equipped to protect against. Work. Nazi prisoners were forced to work 12 to 14 hours a day of forced labor. The jobs were often useless, unnecessarily difficult work like moving heavy sandbags, carrying heavy stones, and digging trenches and tunnels. Construction was also done by prisoners for the camp and external companies. Some camps had factory work, which was also difficult as they are expected to work as quickly as possible. Any disapproval from Nazi guards could lead to punishment and death. To internees, jobs were given, especially farming in some camps, to support the war effort. In total, camps produced 85% of their own vegetables. Schools were also created for children in the camps. Many Japanese willingly enlisted in the war for the US Army when an opportunity arose to prove their patriotism, like Kaiko's father. Other jobs were available for the Japanese, including doctors, teachers, newspaper editors, infrastructure maintainers, and waitresses, paying between $12 and $19 a month. The white workers were paid over 10 times as much as the Japanese. Food. Nazi prisoners were often given bread, a soup for lunch, and a soup for dinner. Sometimes they would get a tasteless coffee, margarine, or thin slices of sausage. The capos, the inmate in charge of the work team, which are often criminals and sadistic, might throw the bread in mud or spill the coffee to risk getting the prisoner in trouble for wasting food. On average, Nazi prisoners got 1,300 calories a day. For context, the modern recommendation is 2,500 calories a day for men and 2,000 a day for women. Towards the end of the war, 1,300 calories went to 700 calories a day. The Japanese were given sugar, coffee, and ration points for processed food and meat, just like all other civilian citizens were, along with the food that they self-produced. The food served at different mess halls varied widely, as some chefs were conscientious and others just tried to quickly produce a slop that would be food-like enough to be considered food. The basic goods needed were supplied, and extra was expected to be produced or purchased by the Japanese. Civil and human rights violations. The imprisonment of Jews and other groups by Nazis without any due process was a clear violation of civil rights. Nazi prisoners were experimented on during pseudo-medical experiments. They ignored all ethical concerns and did so against the will of the victims, of which there were thousands. The list of experiments is long, and they're all cruel and terrible. They're done with no anesthetics. The living editions, the roll call, the work, and the food, along with the unethical and unjustified punishment and killing of tens of thousands or millions of people, follows no code of moral, ethical, nor human right. It dehumanized every part of every prisoner. The killing of millions by Nazis in the camps is perhaps the greatest human rights violation. They were put to death for nothing more than religion and ancestry. While not as bad in the camps, the imprisonment of the Japanese, also without any evidence of harm, was a violation of their civil rights. In the camps, the traditional Japanese family structure was often broken, as young people ate with friends rather than family, and children played in an informal social milieu. The camps created an undeserved, harsh psychological landscape of stress, anxiety, and a loss of identity due to the military surveillance, some shortage of resources, and inadequate facilities. So let's conclude. The Holocaust was a tragedy on a much larger scale and of significantly worse consequence than the internment of Japanese Americans. Compared to the brutal murder and imprisonment of millions in Nazi Germany, the Japanese internment looks light in comparison, but their suffering was also very much real. Being forced to live in the camps became a major block in their lives. They were forced to evacuate their homes, leaving nearly everything, so that they could be shipped off to centralized camps further east, as the administration of the US believed that they were a threat if they were on the West Coast. Life was changed for them permanently, and the impacts of racism affected them before and after the internment, a longer-lasting effect of the war. It separated people like Keiko from the people who they loved, like Henry. In the end, Keiko and Henry were split apart and had to live separate lives without each other, left to wonder what could have been.